The encrypted transmission that changed everything came through Rachel's headphones at 1847 hours, crackling with the unmistakable urgency of soldiers in immediate danger. Through the tactical frequency she wasn't officially authorized to monitor, she heard the voice of Navy SEAL Team Alpha's leader, his professional calm barely masking the desperation of their situation. "Base, this is Scorpion 6. We are under heavy fire. I repeat, we are under heavy fire. Team leader down with multiple gunshot wounds. Second team member critically injured with shrapnel wounds to the torso and legs, requesting immediate medical evacuation." The transmission was broken by static and the distant sound of automatic weapons fire, but the message was devastatingly clear. Rachel's unauthorized warning hadn't reached them in time. The ambush she'd predicted had happened exactly as her intelligence analysis had suggested it would. And now 2 Navy SEALs were dying in the Afghan mountains because the military bureaucracy had been too slow and too skeptical to act on information that could have saved them. The response from Base Command was immediate but problematic. "Scorpion 6, this is Base Actual. We have no available medical evacuation assets in your sector. Nearest helicopter is 40 minutes out. Weather conditions are deteriorating and your position is too hot for standard extraction protocols." Major Harrison's voice carried the weight of someone making calculations between acceptable losses and available resources. Scorpion 6 team leader is losing blood fast. He needs surgical intervention within the next 30 minutes or we're going to lose him. Can you provide any alternative extraction options? The SEAL's voice was growing more strained, and Rachel could hear the sounds of ongoing combat in the background. "Scorpion 6. All available aircraft are committed to operations in sectors Bravo and Charlie. Engineering is working on alternative solutions, but you need to hold your position and continue applying first aid until extraction becomes feasible." The response was bureaucratically correct and tactically useless. Hold position while under fire, treat wounds that required surgical intervention, and wait for resources that might not arrive in time. Rachel listened to this exchange with growing horror, knowing that she was hearing men die because the system designed to protect them was constrained by resources, procedures, and risk assessments that prioritized institutional concerns over individual lives. "Is there any way to expedite extraction?" Behind his words, Rachel could hear the sounds of someone trying to remain professional while watching a teammate die. Major Harrison's response was measured but grim. "Scorpion 6, we're exploring all available options. Continue first aid procedures and maintain your position. Help is coming, but you need to hold on. Help is coming." The phrase that military personnel used when they couldn't honestly say that help would arrive in time, when procedure required optimism, even in hopeless situations. Rachel had heard it used before, usually in situations where soldiers died, while waiting for resources that were committed elsewhere or solutions that took too long to implement. She thought about Navy SEAL Team Alpha, 2 men whose names she still didn't know, bleeding in the mountains while bureaucrats calculated acceptable risk levels and resource allocation formulas. She thought about the condolence letters that would be written by morning, explaining to families that their sons had died serving their country with honor. What those letters wouldn't mention was that their deaths could have been prevented if the intelligence she'd provided had been taken seriously instead of being filtered through layers of bureaucracy until the original urgency was lost in procedural requirements and jurisdictional concerns. The breaking point came at 1,645 hours when Captain Rodriguez stopped by her bunker. "Rachel, I spoke with Major Harrison's office about your intelligence concerns. He's agreed to have someone review your analysis after the current operation is completed. If your assessment proves accurate, it will be incorporated into future mission planning." Rodriguez's smile suggested she thought she'd solve the problem through proper channels. "Ma'am," Rachel replied, struggling to keep her voice level. "With respect, those men don't have time for future mission planning. They need immediate assistance based on current intelligence. I understand your frustration, but we have protocols for a reason. Your analysis will be properly evaluated when resources become available." Rachel returned to her bunker, feeling the familiar burn of institutional dismissal. But this time, it was accompanied by something new. A growing awareness that the system she'd trusted to protect soldiers was actively preventing her from protecting them. Her expertise was being filtered through layers of bureaucracy, each layer adding delay and skepticism until the original urgency was lost in procedural requirements and jurisdictional concerns. Standing in her communications bunker, surrounded by the equipment that had defined her military role for over a year, Rachel recognized the moment that would define her as a soldier. She possessed the tactical knowledge to reach Navy SEAL Team Alpha, the medical training to stabilize their wounds, and the communication expertise to coordinate their extraction. What she lacked was official authorization to act. But Rachel's unofficial preparation had revealed possibilities that weren't visible through official channels. Her detailed study of local terrain had identified a series of goat paths and dry creek beds that could be navigated on foot, cutting the travel time to Scorpion SAXS position from hours to approximately 90 minutes. More importantly, her analysis of enemy communication patterns suggested that their forces were already beginning to withdraw from the immediate area, having achieved their objective of ambushing the SEAL team. The decision crystallized with startling clarity. She would not sit in her bunker listening to good men die while bureaucrats debated risk assessments and resource allocation. Her medical pack contained enough supplies to stabilize critical wounds. Her tactical vest held ammunition for her M4 rifle. Her communication equipment could coordinate extraction once she reached the wounded SEALs. At 19:15 hours, Rachel began her unauthorized mission. She moved through the base perimeter using maintenance routes she'd memorized during months of careful observation. The guard rotations were predictable, creating windows of opportunity for someone who understood their patterns. Her small stature, so often cited as a limitation in military service, became an advantage as she navigated through shadows and blind spots that would have exposed a larger operator. The Afghan terrain stretched before her, hostile and unforgiving, but Rachel understood that detection meant failure. Her determination to prove the system wrong drove her forward. The enemy communication she monitored through her portable radio confirmed that hostile forces were withdrawing from their ambush positions, confident that their mission had been accomplished. They weren't expecting a rescue attempt, certainly not one conducted by a single soldier moving independently through terrain they considered impassable for military vehicles. Their tactical assumptions were about to encounter Rachel's determination to prove them wrong. The goat path she'd identified proved navigable but treacherous. Loose rocks shifted under her boots, threatening to send her tumbling into ravines that would end her mission before it began. The dry creek beds offered concealment, but required careful navigation to avoid dead ends that would cost precious time. At 2,147 hours, she established radio contact with Navy SEAL Team Alpha using encrypted frequencies that weren't part of standard communications protocols. Scorpion 6, this is Guardian Angel. I'm approximately 2 kilometers from your position, approaching from the southeast. What's your current status? The call sign was improvised, chosen to avoid identification while establishing her rescue intentions. The first thing Rachel noticed as she approached Navy SEAL Team Alpha's position was the blood. Dark stains in the sand caught the moonlight, creating a trail that told the story of 2 men trying to find cover while seriously wounded. The second thing she noticed was the alertness of the conscious SEAL, his weapon trained on her approach despite obvious pain from his own injuries. Guardian Angel, I have visual on single operator moving from the southeast. The SEAL's voice carried amazement, tinged with suspicion. You're smaller than I expected for someone conducting solo rescue operations in hostile territory. Even in their desperate situation, her size was generating doubt about her capabilities. Scorpion 6. Size is irrelevant when you're bleeding out. I'm approaching your position now for medical assessment. Rachel moved into their defensive perimeter, immediately focusing on the wounded team leader while maintaining awareness of their tactical situation. Her medical training took over, pushing aside the significance of the moment in favor of practical, life-saving requirements. The team leader, Staff Sergeant David Martinez, according to his name tape, was unconscious with multiple gunshot wounds to the torso and left leg. His breathing was shallow and rapid, indicating shock from blood loss, while his pulse was weak but regular. The tactical situation was deteriorating. Enemy forces might return to confirm their kills, and every minute spent in this position increased their vulnerability. The conscious SEAL, Petty Officer Second Class James Wilson, had shrapnel wounds to his right shoulder and thigh, but remained combat effective. Rachel began immediate medical intervention, applying pressure bandages and administering morphine while calculating extraction options. The nearest helicopter landing zone was still 40 minutes away, but her alternative route could get them to safety. "We need to move now." Rachel secured Martinez to an improvised stretcher constructed from his tactical vest and available equipment. Wilson, despite his wounds, insisted on maintaining rear security as they began their extraction. The return journey proved exponentially more difficult with 2 wounded men. Every step required careful calculation to avoid jarring Martinez's injuries while maintaining tactical awareness of potential enemy contact. The goat paths that had seemed navigable during her solo approach now presented life-threatening obstacles. Loose rocks threatened to send the stretcher tumbling into ravines. Narrow passages required precise maneuvering to avoid further injury to the unconscious SEAL. Wilson's condition was deteriorating, his initial adrenaline-fueled determination giving way to blood loss and shock. Rachel found herself supporting both men, her medical training crucial as she monitored vital signs while navigating treacherous terrain. At 02:45 hours, enemy voices echoed from the valley below. A patrol had returned to investigate the ambush site, discovering the blood trail that marked their extraction route. Rachel made the tactical decision to deviate from her planned route, leading them higher into the mountains where the terrain would favor a small group over larger pursuing forces. The detour added precious time to their journey, but concealment was now more critical than speed. Wilson's breathing became labored, his steps unsteady. Martinez remained unconscious, his pulse growing weaker despite her medical interventions. The pursuit intensified as dawn approached. Rachel could hear voices growing closer, coordinated search patterns indicating professional military tracking. Her deviation into higher terrain had bought them time, but not safety. Wilson collapsed at 04:15 hours, his body finally succumbing to blood loss and exhaustion. Rachel made the agonizing decision to carry both men, alternating between supporting Wilson and pulling Martinez's stretcher. Her own physical limits were approaching, but stopping meant death for all 3 of them. The radio crackled with base communications as search and rescue helicopters prepared for dawn reconnaissance. She keyed her emergency frequency, breaking protocol to request immediate extraction. Base actual, this is Guardian Angel. I have 2 wounded Navy SEALs requiring immediate medical evacuation. Current position approximately 3 kilometers northeast of original contact site. The response was immediate and confused. Guardian Angel, identify yourself. You're not authorized on this frequency. This is Specialist Rachel Torres, Communications Division. I have conducted unauthorized rescue of Scorpion 6 personnel. Both require immediate surgical intervention. Major Harrison's voice cut through the confusion with barely controlled anger. Specialist Torres, you are ordered to maintain current position. A full investigation will be conducted regarding your unauthorized actions. Sir, with respect, these men will die without immediate medical attention. I'm continuing toward extraction point Charlie. The helicopter appeared at 0630 hours, its rotors beating against the mountain air as Rachel guided it to her position using smoke grenades. The medical crew aboard immediately took control of Martinez and Wilson, their professional efficiency a stark contrast to the chaos of the past 8 hours. Rachel collapsed as the aircraft lifted off, her body finally acknowledging the physical and emotional toll of her unauthorized mission. The flight back to base was a blur of medical procedures and radio communications as the crew worked to stabilize both SEALs. Martinez required immediate surgery for internal bleeding, while Wilson needed blood transfusions and wound debridement. Both men would survive because of Rachel's intervention. The reception at base was mixed. Major Harrison waited on the landing pad, his expression unreadable as Rachel was escorted from the helicopter. Captain Rodriguez stood beside him, along with several senior officers whose presence suggested this incident would have far-reaching consequences. Specialist Torres, you are confined to quarters pending a full investigation of your actions. Your unauthorized departure from base, failure to follow direct orders, and violation of operational security protocols will be thoroughly reviewed. Rachel nodded, too exhausted to argue. She had violated regulations, ignored direct orders, and acted outside her authority. But Martinez and Wilson were alive. Sometimes doing the right thing meant accepting the consequences of defying a system that prioritized procedure over human life. The investigation lasted 3 days. Rachel sat through endless interviews, detailed reviews of her actions, and stern lectures about military hierarchy and operational security. Senior officers parsed every decision she'd made, questioning her authority, her methods, and her motivations. But the facts were undeniable. Martinez and Wilson were alive because of her intervention. On the 4th morning, Major Harrison summoned her to his office. Colonel Peterson sat behind the desk, his expression serious but not hostile. The investigation had revealed uncomfortable truths about the military's response to the initial crisis. The bureaucratic delays that had prevented timely assistance to Scorpion 6 raised questions about operational effectiveness and decision-making protocols. Specialist Torres, your actions violated multiple regulations and endangered base security through unauthorized departure. However, your tactical knowledge, medical skills, and operational success cannot be ignored. The colonel leaned forward. We're recommending you for special operations training. Your unauthorized mission demonstrated capabilities that suggest you're wasted in a communications role. Rachel felt a surge of vindication mixed with uncertainty about her future. The system that had dismissed her intelligence and constrained her actions was now acknowledging her potential. Martinez and Wilson, both recovering from their injuries, had requested to speak with her. Their gratitude was evident, but more importantly, their respect confirmed that her actions had meaning beyond military regulations and career advancement. 3 months later, Rachel stood at the graduation ceremony for Special Operations Preparatory Course. Her new assignment a testament to how one night of decisive action had transformed her military career. The condolence letters that would have been written for Martinez and Wilson remained unwritten, replaced by commendations recognizing their courage under fire and successful extraction from hostile territory. The bureaucratic system that had initially constrained her now channeled her capabilities toward missions where independent thinking and tactical innovation were valued rather than discouraged. Her unauthorized rescue had become a case study in adaptive leadership and tactical problem-solving. Captain Rodriguez, now serving as her training officer, approached with Rachel's new orders. Afghanistan deployment, Special Reconnaissance Unit. Your intelligence analysis skills combined with your demonstrated field capabilities make you ideal for deep reconnaissance missions. Rachel accepted the orders, understanding that her path from communications specialist to special operations had been forged in the mountains of Afghanistan, carrying 2 wounded SEALs to safety while defying a system that prioritized procedure over human life. The military had learned from her actions, adapting protocols to better utilize personnel with unconventional skill sets. Sometimes the system changed not through policy reform, but through individuals who refused to accept that good soldiers should die while bureaucrats debated resource allocation. Martinez and Wilson had returned to active duty, their recovery complete and their respect for Rachel absolute.